Hi, everybody. Welcome to Season 2, Episode 15 of our Back to Life podcast. I am your host, Danny Bader, where each week I bring you an individual whose story will inspire you through their wisdom and their experience and their insight. Today's guest, Dr. Shahana Alibhai, is a professional speaker, family physician, and mental health expert. She has worked with a multitude of organizations to help their people gain more clarity into their own mental health. She's a lead physician at one of British Columbia's largest youth health centers, and much of her career has been focused on those struggling with their mental health. Her insights are highly sought after, and her TED Talk, Emotional Literacy for Better Mental Health, has received rave reviews. She's a master at blending her personal story of postpartum anxiety and the resulting shame, denial, and mental health challenges with a professional background in cognitive behavioral therapy and mindfulness meditation. Her candor, humor, and refreshing honesty will shine light on a topic that is too often stigmatized, and it will inspire you to have authentic dialogue and keep moving forward. You'll want to listen for sure to Dr. Shahana's thoughts on permission to pause, a very interesting concept. She also has a model called N²S². So it's two N's and two S's. The N's stand for notice and then name it. And you'll have to listen to see what the S's stand for. And then Dr. Shahana also has a really cool, simple model that she calls the optimal health pyramid. And you're going to like when we dig into that. And I guarantee you're going to have some things that you can take away for yourself and some things that you can share with others. So sit back, get ready to share, comment, pass this along to other folks as I welcome Dr. Shahana Alibhai. Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of our Back to Life podcast. I'm excited to have our guest today, Dr. Shahana Alibhai. In the intro, you heard a lot about her experience now. So Shahana, thanks a lot for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yes. You know, when we bring guests on here and in the work you and I do, we'll dig into that. It seems that anybody in our line of work, has a story, and that story may have changed their life dramatically, or it may kind of have impacted their course a bit. What's your story?
That's such a great place to start because, like I say, even to the youth that I work with, they might not think that they have a story worth listening to, but I'm always there to listen to their story. So just to preface that, I'm a physician. I work in British Columbia. I work at one of the largest youth health centers. We're so lucky to have a place like this, which is really a one-stop shop that any youth between the ages of 12 and 24 can go. They can see a doctor, they can see a counselor, a social worker, a drug and alcohol counselor, and it's all under one roof because we know that for many of us, but especially youth, accessibility is a priority, right? And many of the times they might not be at a stage where they want to talk to their guardian or their parents about the issues that they're having. So being part of the solution to having a safe space for youth has always spoken to my heart in a big way. But I have to say, I think I was playing the role really well. I was playing the role of a physician. I was playing the role of an advocate for mental health. But I think it wasn't until my own experience of having postpartum anxiety and OCD did I actually realize the vulnerability and courage that these patients have to show up with every day. Because I hate to say it, but I think for a long point in my life, I really felt that mental health was a you problem, but not a me problem.
Yes.
I felt that having these 10, 12 years of education, I felt like having the privileged background that I did, it was almost a bit, oh yeah, I understand that you're going through that, but no. I have these layers of protection around me because I know too much and I have too much going for me.
Right. And that's why, when you and I were introduced and we've had a few conversations and kind of struck it off as kindred spirits, that's why I really wanted to get you on the podcast here, because I think, and speak to this for a moment, and then I do want to hear a little bit more about your story after the birth of your first child. Speak a little bit more about this notion of mental health when people know that they're not as mentally healthy as they can be, and they put up that facade, or they're scared or they're embarrassed. Or because I'm sure people are out there or are listening to it.
And I like that. That's exactly right. I think I like to call mental health meant for all health, because I would never have a patient come into my office and say, you know what, Dr. Alibhai, I'm too good for exercise. Like, I really am. I'm just too good for it. And I'm too good to eat right. And I'm too good to sleep well. Like, everyone knows we need to be, but no one in their right mind is going to say that they're superior to that. So if we can't get away with that for our physical health, how come we can get away with that for our mental health? And the big part of it is the shame and the stigma, saying that something is broken within you. Something needs to be fixed. Something has happened to you that makes you the reason that you are. When I think if we make it universal, just like exercise, just like our physical health, just like the dietary recommendations, then we're all on the same playing field. And that was a lesson I had to learn.
I think that is so good. And, I'll often talk to people and I'll use that term broken. And what I'll offer to them sometimes is I'll say, our brains just get broken, and the way we think, although, as you made a great point, it's not broken where it needs to be fixed. If you broke your bone or your wrist, you wouldn't say, oh, it's fixing. Okay. You say it's healing. So what I offer to people, I say, hey, listen, our brain's going to get broken at some point. Life is going to whack us upside the head and we're not going to be able to process what's happening to us or what did happen to us. And that's okay. It's just important to get support, whatever range of support you need, whether it's medication and intense professional support, or sometimes just the support of your friends and family to heal through that, to heal through it. What do you think?
Well, I'll never forget. There was this patient that came in and she was only 15, and she looked at me and she's like, I'm living with my aunt and my uncle, but I don't really want to go home right now. And as a clinician, that's always a bit of a red flag. And what we deal with a lot, of course, is notions of suicidality. So I felt like we were embarking upon that road. And remember, this is the first time I've ever talked to this patient before. And I had to ask, I said, well, where is your mom? Where is your dad? And she said, my dad's in jail. And then she ended with a sentence that most youth, a lot of their parents are in jail. That's not an uncommon thing. But she said, I hope he stays there for a very, very long time. So I had to ask, I said, well, can you tell me why he's put away? And it was because he sexually assaulted and raped her. And she was the one who put him behind bars. So this is a girl at 15 who endured this trauma between the ages of 9 and 12, right? So we talk about that she could have an outlook on life that this is no fault of her own. This is her father. This is someone that when you're born, you just have a mother and father. You think that in the world, two people I should be able to trust.
Right.
But she looked at me right there and then, and she's like, you know what? Most people live their life in a dream. She's like, I've woken up from that dream. She's like, I'm not going to live my life that, but I'm not take anything for granted. I'm not going to just be fine because this happened to me. And now I know where I want to go in life. And she's like, by putting my dad away, I'm stopping the cycle. And that's at that 15
years old, man.
Yeah.
What good wisdom there, huh?
Yeah. So I think that perfectly illustrates so many different things. But I think one of the things too is that so many things can happen to us, but this can be controversial in some ways, but the one piece that I feel that resonates amongst youth that have gone through a lot of trauma in their early life, those that have high degrees of resiliency are able to look at that trauma as something or a sliver as advantageous to them. It doesn't have to be a lot, just a sliver. And that's what holds them through. That's what carries them through.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just kind of that proverbial chapter of their life, right? In terms of, certainly it was intense and tragic. No question.
Exactly. So
I think what was the, when did you talked earlier when we first started, that you've had this, mental health is you, it's not me. And then you and I talked, you had your first child, you have 3 beautiful young boys, I know. So you're very, very busy, you and your husband. What happened? What transpired after the birth of your first child that really said, wow, this mental health can kind of impact everybody?
Well, exactly. And I think coming from the profession, you will know about postpartum depression and anxiety. And once again, I was going to study my way out of it. We all have these pieces of our identity that we actually use more as shields than we use for good. So for me, my shield of life was always studying and academics. That's what brought me acceptance. It wasn't looks, it wasn't sports, it wasn't music or drama. And all of us, if you really think about it, we all have a shield that we put up and say, look, I'm good at this. So I call this as identity as transactional, right? If I do this well, then you will like me, right? And that's how I survived, high school. That's how I survived medical school. Medical school is built a lot on shame, right? So the smarter you are, the less shamed you get. The dumber you are, if you miss a question, you feel like garbage. So that cycle only perpetuates itself. But then in comes my first child. And the joke for me throughout medical school was people wanted to specialize in all of these glamorous specialties. For me, I wanted to specialize in motherhood. And that's all I ever talked about. I can't wait to be a mom. 6 weeks after residency was done, I was pregnant. My husband and I were pregnant with our first child.
Right.
And I really embodied that position statement that pregnancy is put on a pedestal. I thought it was unicorns and rainbows. And I think if I really dig deep, a lot of the reason I felt that way is because I was so burnt out. I thought motherhood, I thought maternity leave would be a bit of a breather, a socially acceptable breather. I'm growing a human. You can't argue with me for not achieving something, right? But can't I take a break?
Yes. God, why do we need permission to kind of take a break in life?
I call it permission to pause. I once told a counselor, can you please give me permission to pause because I need to get off this hamster wheel. And a lot of the reason is it goes back to that self-worth. It's nothing to do. I didn't do medicine for myself.
Sure.
I did it so that when I go to a party, I can say, oh, I'm a doctor, like me. And I'm going to be super vulnerable right now. And I'm not the only one. I know I'm not the only one, right? It served me well because it's led to a higher purpose and a higher calling.
Yes.
But so many of us want to drop that tidbit and see, what is your reaction to me? Do your eyes like me once I told you that I'm worth this much, that I'm this good at a sport, that whatever the case might be,
sure.
Right?
Right.
When do we learn to lead with ourselves? But the problem is we don't even know who we are. That's the problem, right?
Yeah.
So I led my life thinking, okay, if I had the top GPA in high school, you would like me. And then I was, a medical student, you would like me. And then a mother. You must like me if I'm a mother, right? But everything came crashing to a halt because I didn't address something that I should have addressed for a very long time. See, I've done many podcasts and I typically skirt around the truth by saying that I had postpartum anxiety. But the truth was that since the age of 4 or 5, I started having these symptoms. I didn't know what they were. I would learn later, a slide flashed before me 20 years later in medical school, that it actually was a subset of OCD, where you just have the intrusive thoughts, but you don't have the compulsions, much less recognized, hardly talked about. But postpartum OCD, if you've had a history of OCD, will come bite you in the butt. And that's exactly what it did to me. So that was my rock bottom and I say this because 7 years ago, before my son was born, nobody was talking about this kind of thing. Postpartum OCD, one of the most common intrusive thoughts is, could you harm your child? And who in their right mind is going to tell their husband or their partner, their doctor, their family member, of course you're not. You're going to live in shame. And I did that for a year. And the only way out for me was thinking that, okay, perfect. I think it's better off for my family not for me to be here anymore. And this is someone that deals with suicidality all the time. But yet in my head, it sounded like a great idea.
Right. So what was the path out? What was that proverbial, the switch that flipped where you said, okay, I have to get out of this, or I am getting out of it, or I see a path out, or I'm asking for help. What was that?
It was driving on the road one day and thinking that it was a very good idea to drive into oncoming traffic. And I was still practicing as a physician. I was seeing mental health patients, and it caused me pause because I said, if I was my own patient, what would I be telling myself right now? See, this is the thing. It is so easy for physicians to say, oh, just get some counseling, just start some medication.
Right.
Like that's easy, right? No, it's not easy.
Mm-hmm.
And now I get it. It's not easy to put chemicals into your body. It's not easy to go and bare your soul to a stranger. None of that is easy.
Right.
And I had been dishing out that advice like it was candy because I thought that, oh, just get better, right? What's your problem? Just snap out of it. And I felt that nuance of snap out of it from my family.
Yeah, that's probably one of the worst things we can say, and stop there. So often, anybody listening, if you have somebody in your life that's struggling, acknowledge it, acknowledge the struggle. And as you say, the path of support, going to a doctor, going on meds, going to counseling or whatever it might be, is not easy. So I would just offer to everybody, acknowledge that we can't snap out of it. When I had my issues years ago after we lost my friend in an accident, you've had yours, you don't snap out of it. It's too intense. So just acknowledge that, lead with love and meet them where they are, I think.
Nobody wakes up in the morning saying, I really can't wait to feel this way.
Right.
I didn't want to have those types of thoughts by any means, right?
Mm-hmm.
But now when I see a patient with OCD or even see a patient with anxiety or see a mom who's postpartum, do you know what I do now is I ask. It is very normal to have these intrusive thoughts. I've done studies where 96% of new parents will have these types of intrusive thoughts.
Sure.
It's just the subset who cannot stop them. Most people say, oh, that's a weird thought. Let it go, move on with their day.
Sure.
But unless a physician, a counselor, a trusted healthcare professional actually outright comes and says the scary words, you're missing a huge cohort of patients or people that need your help too. So yeah, acknowledge, offer a listening ear. Don't be judgmental, right? Nobody wants to wake up feeling this way too. But the way out, like you mentioned, was I couldn't even see my only family doctor because she was a friend of mine, right? She's a colleague. I graduated with her. So there was too much shame. I was never going to go admit to feeling like a failure. So I called an anonymous helpline, a physician helpline.
Great.
I told them my story. And at the end, they said, you're going to have to go on medications. You're going to have to see a counselor, right? And I said, well, I feel so much better. This has been so cathartic. Thank you so much. And let's go. And they're like, not so fast, right? So
right.
It's people want, I think the other message too, is you think it's going to be the first medication. You think it's going to be the first counselor that works.
Sure.
It's not.
Yeah.
It's trial and error.
Oh no, man. I went through counselors and psychologists and priests, like changing underwear, man. I was getting rid of them every other day and week and none clicked. So yeah, don't anybody out there that if you've gone to somebody to help you and you go, oh, that didn't work. That's okay. As you said, you may not find that right person for you, exactly. in the first or second or third. Keep going. Because there is a right person for sure out there.
And things, I think when we talked at the start of the podcast about, why people can just almost exist without wanting to refine their mental health, it's so unlike our physical health in the sense that if somebody is carrying a few extra pounds, they are reminded of that every day in the tightness of their jeans or the snug fit of their sweater. But
or the mirror, or they're looking in the mirror, right? I don't know how many times I tell people, don't look in the mirror. Get hold useful thoughts, get into your day around nutrition and exercise and go,
But we don't have that feedback for mental health until things start to slide off the slope. So many of us are walking around living out those 4-letter words, which is fine. I'm okay. I'm just fine. But until things go really bad, and so I almost think that people who do endure various sorts of nudges in their life to get them to optimize their health, well, that has to be a blessing, doesn't it?
Yeah. Oh, I think so. So let's do this. Let's start to shift now. Because mental health, as we talk about it right now, and I can even feel the emotion of you and me, it's heavy. There's a heavy energy to it. So let's talk a little bit, and people know, right, when they're not as mentally healthy as they can be. Let's talk now. Where do people go? What do they do to move forward? Let's bring in that aspect, not even of hope. When people say, I hope I can get better, I would switch out that word and say trust. Because hope is just to want something to happen. Trust is a firm belief in the reliability of something or someone. Trust is a much stronger word in our the energy of our vocabulary and what it does to us. So what should people, you talk a lot about the foundation of our health starts in our mind. That's a great quote. What does that mean?
I love that. Yes, exactly. So before we even dive into there, everyone needs to take 30 seconds, a minute to actually confirm with themselves if this statement is true. Do you appreciate yourself? Do you acknowledge yourself? Can I give you permission to measure your success backwards? All of those three things, because why embark on this journey of optimization, of training your brain, of building self-awareness, if you don't have an iota of self-compassion? I think we throw around the word self-love so much that it's become completely diluted.
Yeah.
I like to say is it's self-acknowledgement. And I lacked that for most of my adult life. I just kept striving forward because guess what? Every time you reach a goal, you're just going to set a new one.
Right.
And that leads to the perpetual cycle of feeling dissatisfied and unhappy. The whole paradigm shift has to be train your brain to be happy, do great work, help someone else, which makes you happy. And there and then the cycle goes. But I have 3 young boys under the age of 6. It is so easy right now to get caught up in the loop of what mark did you get? Like, what did you achieve? How well did you swim? Like, it's always outcome based, right?
Sure.
So that is a foundation. Like, give yourself just even, I don't care where you are at in your life, but can you even look backwards? Because one of the keys to contentment has to be progress. I don't care if you've achieved anything, but if you can make steady progress on something that is meaningful to you, I always say it's progress and it's purpose builds our self-confidence, those two things. And that's what I try to teach my youth.
Purpose.
If you can have a combo of, so if I tell the youth, and these are young kids, and so many of them actually will be surprised. They know what they want to do. I have this lovely youth and she wants to be an embalmer. She's like, ever since I was little, she's like, I want to make the dead pretty. And when she talks about that, her eyes light up. She starts smiling. And out of my top 5 youth whose stories have been the most traumatic and touching for me, she's on that list. It is just horrendous what she's gone through, but she has a purpose. So if she can make progress towards her purpose, that self-confidence cup is overflowing, right?
That's superb. I like that.
So that's why I created the Optimal Health Pyramid, is because if you look at the pyramid, it's on my website. The middle part of the pyramid focuses on everything that we learn about if you listen to podcasts or read books, exercise more, eat well, and rest smart, be careful, meditate, watch your sleep, all that stuff. Everyone knows that. We all can optimize it. Don't get me wrong. But the foundation, the bottom part, is 2 things. It's training your brain. It's thinking better. And it's cultivating and clearing out unhealthy relationships. Because
so the pyramid is 3 levels, right?
Yes.
Because I want to dig into this because I really liked your framework and I like the simplicity. It's not a pyramid of 9 levels, or you know what I mean? And it doesn't have any new words like, Dr. Shahana didn't any new buzzwords that we have to get wrapped around. So the bottom of the pyramid, the widest part, right? The most stable part that we should have, the foundation, is around thinking better and around connecting deeply. Right.
If you do nothing else but focus on those 2 things,
right,
that gives you, that is why I bottomed out. That is why I hit my rock bottom, because I stopped cultivating useful relationships. I was so focused in medical school. I let many of my friendships go, except for my husband. And I had no idea what thinking better meant. Like that was a phrase that was foreign to me. I spent all my time in the middle section, which was, I thought I could drink fish oil and get out of my OCD. I thought I could yoga my way out of my anxiety. Not to say that that's not bad.
Sure. I used to try to drink a lot of vodka to do that for me, and that didn't work either. Exactly. So I'm glad those days are behind me. And some of people listen and go, "Oh yeah, I remember those days. Yeah. A few beers and some red wine now is fine, but no more of that." So at the foundation level, let's stay there for a minute. Let's get real. So connect deeply is obvious. I would say, and you tell me what your thoughts are with somebody, I would say, just think about who do you hang out with, and do they provide resilience and good energy and joy and support to you, also while challenging you, Or do they kind of go the opposite way and kind of suck your energy out? Is that a good way to kind of look at it?
Yeah, it's been coined energy vampires, right? And I love that because you can feel that sucking. And we all have those people in our lives. And sometimes it's hard to break off those ties, but you can distance. You can distance yourself. And I know personally, when I have to provide a lot of warm cues, oh, how are you doing? Oh, it's so nice to see you. When I really don't feel that warm inside because there is an imbalance there, that is what will deplete your emotional battery.
Got it.
So you can't cut, you can distance.
Yeah. Get the good people closer. And I always say to the other ones, love the other ones from a distance. Love them from a distance. So think better. I mean, it sounds great. How do we do it? What can people do right now if mentally they're in a rut? And as I said, they may be at the really one end of the spectrum where you and I were, where it's like, oh my gosh, this is brutal. I don't know if I can go on another day or two. What does the think better? How can folks start to do that?
So the one word is self-awareness. So in my TED Talk in 2019, I delivered this talk about building emotional intelligence or resiliency for our youth. And the school system does a pretty good job of the other components of emotional or EQ, I should say, emotional intelligence. But really, until you're an adult, and not many people in their 50s and 60s might not understand what is self-awareness. And I like to break it down that before we even dive into self-awareness, you better have that compassion for yourself. You better have some curiosity. We have lost the ability to be curious because everything that we think about ourselves, we immediately have a judgment statement. And you better have a cushion or kind of a community to fall back on, because once you start emptying out that closet that you've left for 40 years, things can get a bit messy, right? Self-awareness is simply listening to that voice in your head, that inner roommate, that inner dialogue, that chatter that never shuts up.
Okay. And then when that chatter is negative, and it's I have an acronym HUT, HUT, hold useful thoughts. When those thoughts that we have, that chatter is not useful. It's not empowering us to move in the direction that we need to move to get through all of our shit shows, so to speak. What's the strategy there for you to kind of catch that and shift into a more useful thoughts?
So I'll give you a quick acronym that I use all the time, and I just did it for myself. It's N²S². So the two N's stand for notice. Forget self-awareness if you don't even notice what's happening in your body. And there's usually 3 ways that I know personally work for me, and it might work for you too, that you notice that something is getting a little bit off balance. You can start to feel, if anybody's played piano, the metronome, ticking away. That's how I feel. Exactly. My teacher always used to make it go faster, and I couldn't keep up with that. But I feel like an internal metronome going faster, especially as I pull my car into the garage, ready to meet my 3 beautiful but very energetic children after a tiring day of work. I feel that in my heart. I'm already getting anxious in the car, knowing what's waiting for me behind the doors. I feel that in temperature. If I'm getting anxious, for me, it's getting quite warm, almost like hot flushes in some ways. So you can measure it in actual speed or tempo, in temperature. Or some people see colors. They can honestly feel quite mellow, the yellows and the greens and the blues when things are quite calm and relaxed, but they can start to see red when they feel out of balance. So if those work for you, great, but try to find a way where you can connect your physical and your mental being through noticing. Then you want to name it. This is really hard to do. We don't spend enough time talking about this. They've done studies where they've shown people, if they had to name emotions, they had an average of 3: mad, sad, or glad. That's it. How do you even start to understand what's going on if you don't have the vocabulary, the emotional bandwidth to say, actually, I don't feel angry. I feel disappointed. There was recently an incident in my household where 2 close members of my family were in a conflict, and I was caught in the middle. And at first I was angry. And then I realized that, oh my word, I'm not angry. I'm embarrassed. I'm really embarrassed that this is happening and that I'm caught in between. And dealing with anger and dealing with embarrassment are 2 completely different things.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. You're going to come at them absolutely different. So it's notice and then name it.
Name.
No, there are two ends. So it's N², kind of N2.
N², you got it. And then it's the story. So this is part of listening to that inner dialogue. You are the best salesperson you are ever going to meet in your entire life because you sell yourself the best stories every day. Great. And all of us have a couple of our favorite CDs or our DVDs of stories that we love to replay. I bet you know the story for your spouse or your partner, but we don't want to admit it to ourselves. So I'll be vulnerable. Every morning, I'm faced with 4 lunch boxes. Yes. Of my kids and my husband. And every morning I tell myself the same story. Why do I have to be the one doing this? Why can't they pack their own lunch? Why is it only up to me? And what it is, it's a pity party. Sure. I want someone to feel sorry for me and I want someone to acknowledge me. Right. But I love that tape because that tape fuels probably a very negative part of me. And what happens? My behavior becomes quite resentful, angry, and that's what, that's the cascade of events. But you have to be vulnerable enough to listen to your own story, because if you dig deep enough within that storyline is your significance, is what you want.
So that's a great example. I can remember, my mom, I have a sister and 6 brothers. So we have 7 boys. God bless my mom, but she would make lunches every day. We would come down, and this is back in the day when you had the brown bags, and we all went to Catholic school, and we had to fold them up and put them in our pocket and bring them home. So you use the same brown bag for 5 days in a row. So you're striking a chord with me on the packing the lunches, and this is a great simple example. But you have that narrative of, why do I have to do this? Why shouldn't they do it? Nobody ever thanks me for it. How do you reverse that?
Exactly. So this is ask yourself the question, does this serve me? Mm-hmm. It's okay, because people always say, oh, there's only good emotions or bad emotions. Well, then why are we so attracted to the so-called bad emotions? They're kind of like a very comfortable, down-filled bed. Right. They're familiar. The brain wants things that are familiar. So even though it's a pity party, I will crawl into that pity party because it's familiar to me. So do it. Right. But how long? Yeah. How long are you going to feel sorry for yourself? And the biggest question is the one that even this serve me. Well, stomping my feet and huffing and puffing around the kitchen doesn't serve me so well. That's when you go into the shift. Uh-huh. So that's the second S. And the shift, you can think of it as take a break or break it down. Mm-hmm. Take a break is what many of us do at the end of the day. We have our wine, we have our Netflix, we numb, we distract. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but if you are going into that, tell yourself just for 10 seconds, I'm doing this to numb and distract myself. Because guess what? You're going to spend 50% less time in that activity that you choose to do. Right. So you can take a break in a positive, neutral, or negative way. Yeah. Probably the negative way that all of us have experienced at some time in our life is having one too many glasses of alcohol. It works great. That's why we do it. It does.
Yeah, the consequences are a pain in the neck, but it works in the moment.
Exactly. I met a 17-year-old who just came out of hospital with pancreatitis because she just couldn't stop drinking. And she said, I said, you kind of want your pancreas. You're going to live a long life. And I said, it's not just you. Like, there's a reason that a lot of people are doing this. It works great for the moment. Right. Yeah. But now, but what are the positive and what are the neutral ways of taking a break? And that's where that could be things like reading a book, talking to a friend, journaling, listening to some music, cooking. Right. Find your list. Yes. My list is not your list, but if all of us insure our house and we have a healthcare insurance plan, none of us have a mental health insurance plan, do we? No. Mm-hmm. We don't spend 2 seconds to think about when I'm noticing my tempo going higher. Yes. And I'm telling myself that I'm feeling sorry for myself. Mm-hmm. What do I do? Because guess what? The easiest thing to do is to reach for Netflix, to reach for a glass of wine. Sure. But we need to know what works for us individually. And I give a whole list of things we can do.
Yeah, I love that. So it's N², S². So it's notice and name it,
Name,
and then story
and shift.
And shift, right?
Shift.
I
Like
love it.
literally think of taking one baby step in a different direction. So,
Sure.
And I have multiple ways that we can shift. The whole other bracket of shift, if it's take a break, is one thing. Just let clear your mind, go outside, do something new for you.
Sure.
I'm a homebody. I don't like to leave even to go to my backyard. So sometimes I just walk outside.
Yeah.
That is telling my brain, do something different, do something unfamiliar.
Yeah. And a lot of times when we're engaged in those tasks, whether it be making lunches or whatever, and we're kind of complaining about it or bitching about it, the shift is so powerful to just say, what could I be thankful for about this? I'm thankful for the fact that I have 3 beautiful, healthy young children. The young sons for if you're doing a menial task, or even at work, I'm so thankful I have the stability of this job and the income that comes with it so I can create a life for my family. There's so many ways to just reframe it. I think that's important, and that's the shift that you talk about. So anybody listening out there, right? I always, when we do these podcasts, I want you to walk away, and Dr. Shahana, walk away with something you can start to use and experiment with, right? We don't want to be, esoteric in theory. Yeah, here's the theory and here's the application of it. So take away something from those last couple of minutes there. I'd strongly encourage you. So the top of the pyramid then is impact. So we have foundation, right? Think, better, and connect. Decisions, which is eat, move, and rest, which is common sense, right? Just everybody should go, wait, am I eating as healthy? Am I moving as much as I need to? And am I getting some good rest, right? Which means shut down the screens before you go to bed, watch the alcohol and the food when you're eating later, get that good nourishing rest. And then the top is impact. Talk a little bit about the top of the pyramid.
Yeah. So when I was a little girl, my dad used to take me skiing, right? And there'd be these rope tows. That was in the olden days, right? We'd grab onto that tethered rope and it would lead you to the top. And then you would ski down the bunny hill and on it goes. I always compare impact and purpose as your rope tow to the top, right? That's what I tell my youth. What is going to get you out of here? Because so many of them have, under no fault of their own, being in circumstances that they now need to get out of.
Right.
I had one youth who the parents couldn't afford babysitting. So he was taken from drug house to drug house to drug house. And those were his babysitters. And that's all he knew at a very young age. So at the age of 12, he was addicted to everything under the sun because, of course, he also has a genetic predisposition. So he looked at me and said, you know what? And then now he's 15 or 16. Like, he's not that old still. And he's like, I've lived a life. I don't want to be like my dad. I don't want to be like my mom. I've been there. I've walked that road. I've seen it. I'm going to be a mechanic. I can't wait to start my life. I said, well, that's your rope tow. So how are we going to get you there? Right. And all of us, I think we have this misnomer too in our society that you'll wake up and find your purpose. And it once again will be unicorn and rainbows. It's not like that. There's not one purpose. You can have, you can have multiple purposes. Your purposes can change.
Right.
But the one common denominator is, I think there's a reason why the science of happiness has proven that if you help someone else, even in a small way, it makes you happier. So if your purpose can do that, even in a small way, then you can tick that off your list, right?
Sure. And people would say, well, then how can, if this young man wants to be a mechanic, how can that support somebody? Well, I would say, because he's going to build a business where he does quality work at fair prices so that people trust him and they build that relationship. I think that's spot on. Any endeavor, whether we're speakers or authors or movie makers or mechanics or nurses, my wife's a wonderful nurse of 35 years or whatever. I know she touches and supports people when they show up scared of surgery and everything else, so that's a very, very strong purpose.
Oh, absolutely. And that's what I love about these youth. They're not money centric, right? I would say 75% of them come to me and say, I want to be, a youth counselor, a social worker, a youth advocate, support worker, so that no one else has to go through what I did.
Yeah. Well, money's just one measurement of value in life, right? And it's important for sure. And if folks want to go after that, that's absolutely great. I would just encourage you, watch the process by which you go after that. Are you taking care of yourself? Are you taking care of your family? Are you treating people with respect and good, strong values? And if you are, go make $1 billion, man, and do good with it,
Well, yeah, once again, now then that speaks to your purpose in giving back. Well, that's great too. But Absolutely. I can confidently say that, and there's a little quiz on my website about taking the optimal health pyramid and seeing where you rank, because I think throughout phases and stages in our life, we're going to be putting energies to different parts of it. Sure. But I can confidently say that if you pay attention, or at least keep in mind the various aspects, you might not be happy, but I think you're going to be content.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's good. That is good. We're going to talk about that for sure. So before we get to, I'll just wrap up that pyramid again. Remember, folks, go ahead out to the website and Dr. Shahana will tell you where that is. It's the foundation, right? It's to think better and connect deeply. So look at your relationships. The decisions are just that: eat, move, and rest. I think it's so simple and powerful. And then the top is the impact. So, what is the purpose? What really jazzes you up to get out of bed in the morning? And how can you contribute to people? How can you serve other people as you pursue that? That is really good. So you have a really cool TED Talk. I watched it. So what's the title of that, in case folks want to go listen to that?
Oh, Building Emotional Resiliency in Our Youth.
Okay, Building Emotional Resiliency in Our Youth. So any parents out there, any young people that might be struggling, any educators, it's a really good TED Talk. What's it, 15 minutes or so?
Yeah, 15 minutes. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, it's quick and very, very valuable. And then you also do an awful lot of speaking. So where could folks connect with you, find you, follow you, all that stuff?
Oh, that's great. Yeah. So on my website, just www.drshahana.com. Instagram at the Dr. Shahana is where I'm probably most active. Social media is still just a couple months new for me. I'm still getting into all of that, but I'm really enjoying creating content and posting content there. So please come over and say hi there. Those are the two biggest platforms as well. Yeah, watch my TED Talk and share it. I really hope it does impact you.
Right. And then folks, through your website, they could get in touch with you, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Contact button. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I knew I'd enjoy this conversation. And again, it's cool with podcast guests. We always talk, how long is it going to be? And you and I said, 30 to 45 minutes or something. And again, we could probably go for another hour. But I really, really appreciate, the work that you do, the vulnerability that you have. I just want to acknowledge again, the simplicity of some of the models that you put together to support people. So thank you in that.
Oh, I so appreciate it.
Oh yeah. And I have just one question for you. And you probably touched on these in our conversation, Dr. Shahana. You're sitting down with somebody, could be a youth, 15, 20, could be somebody like Danny Bader, 58 years of age. And you're never going to see the person again. And they say, I'm so glad our paths have crossed. What 2 or 3 things should I really, really consider in my life and kind of keep close to how I live my life? What's really important? What would you say?
So the first thing I would say is that surround yourself with people that are going to nourish you, and realize that the 5 people that you spend most of your time with are predictive of who you're going to be. But make sure that you think about your future self as one of those 5 people. And realize that the person you are today isn't the person you are going to be in months or years' time, but can you somehow make progress towards what you envision that future self to be? Mm-hmm. And the second thing, I think we're so caught up in achieving and ticking off goals from our list. And I loved this analogy one time that I heard, was that you can think of all of your achievements, your degrees, your money, your home, your cars as zeros, tons of zeros. But unless you have a 1 in front of the 0, the 1 meaning your impact, your purpose, how you're going to make things better, those zeros mean nothing. So anchor yourself in purpose.
I love it. 2 very good things. And give yourself a hug every day, because you're worth it, right?
There you go. Perfect.
You got it. Dr. Shahana, thanks so much. And I certainly appreciate you and your work, and wish you and your husband and the 3 boys, a wonderful year ahead. And everybody out there listening, I'm glad that you enjoyed this podcast. Make sure that you take some things away to begin to apply and experiment with. Go ahead and comment on it, share it, check out Dr. Shahana's websites and contents. And until next time, just remember, we come back to life every day. And there's 2 questions. What are you up to creating in your life, and how are you going about doing it? So take care, everybody.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Dr. Shahana. Well, I told you that was going to be a really good conversation with Dr. Shahana. I took so much of it away as it relates to mental health in general, and certainly as it relates to my own journey and quest to stay as mentally healthy as possible. You know, I think it was great when Dr. Shahana shared some of her insight around that permission to pause and make sure that you notice it, name it, listen to your story, and then have the ability to shift it and get out of that negative thought, that pattern that we get so stuck in. And I think her optimal health pyramid is just great, right? Focus on your relationships. Surround yourself with really good people. Take care of yourself physically. And then work to really not find your purpose, because I don't think we do. Work to create your purpose. What gets you out of bed, what gets you excited, and then direct that purpose in the service of others. I think you'll be glad you did. So until next time, go ahead and comment on this podcast, share it, like it, and I wish you all the best as you move forward in the year ahead. Take care.